I want to show you how my eyes see the world, because I've noticed lately the camera wants to make everything really yellow. There's not enough green, there's not enough blue, and anytime I try to change it, it's overexposed, so it's not going to be exactly the way that my eyes see it, but the colour, you know, will be a little bit more like what I see. Anybody like us that you don't even have to be an actual physical shapeshifter. If you're just an animal soul, typically, you know, it's just that alone, we're very connected to nature, and we can communicate with nature on a level, even if you're not aware that you can, you have the potential to, on a level that no one else, no human can. Typically we've got a really strong connection to the earth and to nature, and I've talked about it quite a lot. I've talked about that you can what I call hear the voices of nature, and in modern day human terminology it's called animal telepathy. But it's not just the animals, it's the trees, it's the stones, it's the ground itself, it's the rivers, or what we in olden days, ancient Odin, pagan term, would call anything large or small like this a river. Everything that has a spirit to it, meaning that it's not inanimate. And yes, in paganism we do consider stones to not be inanimate, because we consider them to actually have a spirit, and we actually see them as some of the most ancient beings on this earth, because out of everything they've been here the longest. They've seen eons and eons of things, and therefore we actually think that they're very wise. It's amazing just how different, you know, Abrahamic culture thinks they're inanimate objects, and we think they're wise spirits. But for most humans, you can't really prove that. I mean, you can get a general sense of it, and in pagans people do get general sixth senses, but you know, in terms of actually being able to communicate through telepathy, most humans can't. It's usually reserved for ones like us that actually part of our soul, if not a very big piece of our soul, is something other than human. I've talked about this so many times, but in case you're new to the channel, you know, basically it usually means that it's not only a part of your spirit, but that you've had many past lives as an animal, usually more as an animal than a human. And for me that's most definitely true. The animal side of my soul has always been far greater. You might even add that I really don't have a true human side of my soul. The closest thing is only half human, which is a fawn, and even that, the human side, you know, is not, it's not evenly halved in me. So while currently I'm human, physically, you know, basically human, apart from some physiology differences, heightened senses, very minute physical, perhaps, differences that only a trained eye would be able to see at this point. I physically, right now, am definitely in the form of a human. And I've been that way, I've been stuck that way for most of my life. I've only had a few short, partial shifts. The rest of the time it wasn't even a full shift, you know. If I'd ever shifted fully, I'm sure it was when I was sleeping in a dream or something, because, you know, I've not ever been able to in my memory, you know. I believe even as a young child I remember something like that. I most definitely remember my eyes shifting, you know, my claws, things like that. If I shifted fully, I'm sure I would have remembered. To be away from this space, from nature for so long, and to feel like you don't have a way to get back to it, even though you know you do. It's like I'm distant, like I'm in the wrong body. As a child I used to say I felt like a wolf trapped in a human's body. I didn't realise I actually was an animal trapped in a human's body. And the biggest half of me, I do believe, is a wolf. I do believe that is the biggest third of me. I see things like this. I've always been this way, even before I knew. I've always been different. Even as a child, even before I really understood that I had this gift of what I call the voices of nature, what modern day calls animal telepathy. I really don't like that because, again, it doesn't just stop with animals. It's everything. Before I even knew I had that, you know, I still felt like I understood the animals better than I did the humans. We had a lot more in common. And even if you're born with this gift, you usually have to unlock it in some way, and then you have to fine-tune it. You'll start to hear at first like a bad signal, you know, where you only hear just a few words, and then all of a sudden they turn into full sentences. And then all of a sudden, instead of sounding really far away, it sounds like it's right there. Anyone can just look at this and sense the energy, overall energy, but can you hear every word they're saying? Most humans don't. Most shapeshifters won't unless they tap into it, because nowadays we live in a world where that kind of stuff is actually discouraged. People call us insane, and a lot of the ancient pagan practices have been lost. The totems are always telling me things, but today it seems like they've got more to say than usual. For example, I haven't heard the ravens in a long, long time. But typically in the hotter months you hardly ever hear them or see them. And there was one today that actually spoke to me directly. A lot of times they're just passing through. Raven is a totem I work with quite closely. So I asked the raven what he was doing here, and if he was trying to hunt those birds, because I heard him over very, very near where all the bird feeders were, and I asked him, was he here to try and reset the balance? And I got a very hungry, excited yes, as if he was more excited about the food itself. He must have travelled from a ways away. Figure maybe that wherever he came from, the food wasn't as plentiful. I worry though, people like my neighbours, what are they going to do? They're Abrahamic. I wouldn't put it past them to shoot ravens or any other bird of prey, even though it's illegal. And that doesn't matter to them. That's the kind of people that live here. Still, I look up, I hear all those annoying sounds, and I realise that they are overpopulated, they're hurting the environment, and then right as I think that, I hear the sound of, literally seconds after I think that, I hear the sound of a raven. I wish I could have gotten it on film, but I didn't have the camera out. I actually let out a growl to all of these songbirds, and that's about a few seconds later the raven started cawing, and it came closer to me, made like a little loop, and then went back to what it was doing. And before my neighbours started doing that, the population actually was starting to get under control. The land was starting to heal, and they just undid it all. I won't say they undid everything, but they made a mess of it. It's one thing to have a controlled population like I do, where you can control a domestic population of birds, versus fucking with the imbalances of the wildlife. You know, it's a completely different thing. It's got 30 poultry for 10 acres. It makes sure that nothing can set off balance, any kind of pollution. There's no pollution because they're not overcrowded. Not all farming is, created equal though. There are terrible things that it can do to the environment when it's out of balance, just like anything else. The ravens are hope that all these imbalances are not left unchecked. That is, if had they lived long enough, no matter what it is, the Abrahamics find a way to destroy it. Anything good, anything that brings balance, anything that brings peace, mending, they just always find a way to destroy it. That's part of my purpose. If I could just shift into my animal form, I would be able to do so much more to protect the forest. As a human, I rely on magic, but magic alone isn't enough. There are just certain things I can only do as an animal. Until I'm able to do that, I can visit my home, but I can't ever actually be home. Every time the humans do something to destroy parts of my home, whether it's literal land I own or whether it's just nature in general that I see as home, I widely just sit back and watch it burn, watch it die. Cursing people only does so much. It's not immediate. It doesn't immediately fix the problem. If I was an animal, I could guard this 24/7. I could protect it 24/7 instead of just visiting here. As an animal, every single night I would know exactly who is doing what when, or who isn't. As human, I'm forced to have mundane human tasks. I'm forced to live during the day instead of at night. I'm forced to stay in one place instead of roaming. So I can only protect the 10 acres that I legally own. It's getting tiring to live this way. It's frustrating. I want to rip out of my skin. That's how tired I am of being human. I got a letter today asking me, quite literally asking me, who I thought, quote, the ruler of the earth was. No one rules the earth. The earth rules itself, okay? That's how arrogant and selfish the Abrahamic beliefs are. Further down, it gave me a pamphlet and Bible scriptures and asked me to call for more information. I can do warding against people who don't know me. But people who already know me obviously know I exist, know what I am. That letter sounded like it came exactly from the same people my evil family meets with every Sunday. The last time they went to, quote, church, they told me they started talking about hanging people, and they acted like it was completely normal. You can't just hide from the people who literally try to poison you and then passive-aggressively send you something like that. No, you've got to fight. As human, war magic is about all I've got right now. It's the only thing I can legally do as human. But as an animal, I could hunt them. I literally could hunt the ones that are hunting me.